The scorching summer continues. Soberoni of G&A Reviews here with a servant spotlight for your favorite beach homie, Caster Marie. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize her effectively, and an overall grade comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 4-star servants. I also have a spotlight out for Ruler Martha up on the channel right now, so do check that out right after this. But for now, on to Marie's stats. Marie has a max HP of 11,404, which is low for a 4-star caster but average compared to all the other 4-stars overall, and her max attack of 9,060 is tied for the highest attack stat among all 4-star casters, but when factoring in the caster damage modifier, her true attack becomes 8,154, extremely low for a 4-star servant. Taking a look at her skills, her first skill is Beach Flower rank A+. It increases the attack of all allies for 3 turns between 9.5% and 19.5%, and it also increases the critical star drop rate of all males for 3 turns between 21% and 41%, both depending on level. Her second skill is Radiant Sunflower rank A, which grants her between 5 to 10 crit stars per turn for 3 turns, and restores her HP between 500 and 1000 for 3 turns, both depending on level. And finally, her last skill is Beautiful Princess C rank A, which applies invincibility for 3 times and increases her debuff resist for 3 turns between 30 to 50% depending on level. For her passives, she has Territory Creation rank A, which increases her Arch Guard effectiveness by 10%, and Item Construction rank D, which increases debuff success rate by 4%. Taking a look at her deck and Noble Phantasm, she has a pure Arts deck with Quick, Arts, Buster, and an Arts Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Crystal Dress. It deals heavy damage to all enemies with between a 450% and 750% damage modifier, depending on level. It also decreases the critical hit rate of all enemies by 20% and increases the critical strength of all allies between 20 and 40% depending on overcharge. Taking a closer look at her cards, we see that her Quick card hits 3 times, her Arts hits 5 times, her Buster hits once, and her Extra Attack hits 4 times. She has an NP gain rate of 0.32% and a star rate of 10.9%. She has decent Noble Phantasm gain thanks to her heavy Arts stack, but low star generating due to just 1 Quick card. Don't be fooled. Despite having a good attack stat for a caster and an offensive Noble Phantasm, Caster Marie is primarily a crit support caster, as evidenced by her skills. Beach Flower is a familiar skill that packs both a charisma for the whole party and a star gen buff for male allies. It is the same version as Anne and Mary Archers, so it's pretty strong and it can give your allies a considerable buff for most of the battle. It also synergizes with her next skill, Radiant Sunflower. Radiant Sunflower is Marie's main means of generating crit stars. It has a 20-30 effect of generating up to 10 stars per turn, making it quite consistent, and when paired with a limit broken 20-30, Marie alone can generate 20 stars per turn while this skill is active, and as a caster with low star weight, you don't have to worry about her stealing any of those stars, putting her in an even better position as a star generator. This skill also restores 1000 HP to Marie every turn while it's active, giving her a degree of tankiness. The only problem with Radiant Sunflower is the long cooldown. And finally, her last skill, Beautiful Princess, gives her a great amount of tankiness. Just like her Rider version, it grants her invincibility for 3 hits. It's an incredibly strong defensive skill, similar to Q's protection from arrows. It also gives her a 50% debuff resist, so Marie can avoid stuns and defense downs more easily. I suggest prioritizing Beach Flower first for skill leveling to reduce the cooldown so you can have it active as much as possible, and because it's your only attack buff, followed by Radiant Sunflower for the better heals and star generating, and then finally Beautiful Princess since it still does a great job even at rank 1. Marie's Noble Phantasm is an AoE offensive Arts Noble Phantasm, but more important than the extremely low damage that it deals is the overcharge effect. It boosts crit damage for the whole party by up to 40% for 3 turns. That's a very strong buff, basically a free gem magecraft for the whole party on average, and while Marie's Noble Phantasm gain isn't astounding, it is good enough to spam it out every couple of turns in a dedicated Arts team. This is Marie's major strength and pretty much the only reason you'll want to use her. You'll want to make sure that this crit damage buff is active as much as possible, which means Noble Phantasming as much as possible with Marie. and this does work well specifically for arts crit servants like Nursery Rhyme, Li Shuwen, and Saber Lancelot. However, the problem with Marie really lies in her limited usage. Her star gen on its own isn't good enough to support a crit team, so she must rely on Radiant Garden, which itself has a long cooldown. That means for most of the battle, Marie won't be able to provide crit stars. And while her Noble Phantasm crit buff is strong, she's by no means a Noble Phantasm spammer unless she's being enabled by a strong NP battery like Waver or Tamamo. Thus, she does require a good amount of setup and resources to get going. Another major problem is the crit buff is tied to overcharge and not the Noble Phantasm level, making it inconsistent. So rather than getting the 30 or 40% buff, more often than not, it'll just be a 20% buff, which is actually much weaker than what most support servants with targetable crit buffs offer. Hans, for example, gives all allies a 40% crit buff on a short cooldown skill. But Marie does also have a good amount of tankiness to her, so that is worth considering. In fact, when it comes to Marie Caster, she fits very well into not only crit teams, but stall teams. In an art stall team, you're going to want to pair her with Mosh, Waver, Hans, Tamamo, Edison, Irisveal, or Media Lily. Offensive art crit servants get the most use out of Marie's support skills though, so Archer Arturia, Saber Lancelot, Li Shuwen, Uriel, Orion, and Nursery Rhyme are fantastic pairs for Marie, as she can provide them with crit stars and extra crit damage and attack buffs. Marie Caster's Bondcraft Essence is Summer Memory. It boosts the crit strength of all allies by 25%. It's perfect synergy with her Noble Phantasm, so I highly recommend using this craft essence on her if you get it. Otherwise, go for craft essences that boost your NP gain or help you generate more stars. Ideal craft essences for boosting NP gain include Formal Craft, Divine Banquet, Prisma Cosmos, and Little Halloween Devil. For star generating, I highly recommend using 2030 or a Fox Night Stream. A Fox Night Stream is especially effective since it gives you good NP gain as well. And finally, if you do want to do something a little bit different, Maiden Halloween, Street Choco Maid, and Bridal Training are fun craft essences that give Marie a lot more tankiness. Overall, Caster Marie does make for a solid crit support on arts teams. She has a strong 2030 effect built into her skill set. As a caster, she does not steal stars meant for your offensive servants. She has a strong crit damage buff on her Noble Phantasm that can be spammed out on the right team. And she has a really great defensive skill set, making her incredibly tanky. However, her role is extremely niche, as she doesn't do much else outside of crit support, specifically in arts teams. She doesn't have a reliable way of generating stars consistently because Radiant Garden has such a long cooldown. Her crit damage buff pales in comparison to most other similar buffs that supports offer, and she requires a lot of setup from other servants to be used effectively. Overall, there are a lot better options that fill this niche and offer a lot more than Marie, making her pretty underwhelming for a 4-star, so she gets a C+ from me. I think the major problem is that Hans can do everything that Marie can, but much better, and there are other arts crit supports like Edison and Emiya Assassin that just offer a lot more, which puts Marie in a weird position of not being able to differentiate herself enough from strictly better servants. She does have an edge as a tank though, so if you want more survivability out of your supports, that is one thing to consider. And those are my thoughts on Caster Marie. If you do want to use her, she can definitely still work and do her job, especially if you use her alongside Hans or Edison, because they'll make up for a lot of her shortcomings. But let me know what you guys think and how you plan to use Marie in the comments below, and please do check out the Ruler Martha Spotlight, linked both on screen right now and in the description. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over at our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. Silveroni out. Later.